Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The gavel didn't just fall. It slammed against the mahogany block like a guillotine blade, severing Julian's life from his legacy in a single, deafening crack. Sold to Thorn Enterprises for $400 million. The auctioneer's voice was a jubilant roar, but to Julian Vane, it sounded like underwater distortion. He didn't blink. He didn't breathe. He only stared at the digital display board where the winning bid flashed in mocking crimson LEDs. $400 million. It wasn't just a number. It was the number. The exact, down to the cent calculation of his company's maximum liquidity. A figure so confidential it existed only on an encrypted drive in his safe, and in the whispered confessions shared between lovers in the sanctuary of a shared bed. Julian slowly turned his head, ignoring the flashing cameras and the murmurs of the boardroom elite, his gaze bypassing the smug, predatory grin of his arch-rival, Cassian Thorn, to land on the man sitting quietly in the second row. Elias, Julian's partner of 2 years. Elias, who was currently checking his watch, a look of bored indifference on his beautiful, treacherous face. The silence in the limousine on the way back to Vane Industries was heavy enough to crush a lesser man. Julian sat alone, a glass of untouched scotch trembling slightly in his hand, not from fear, but from a rage so cold it burned like dry ice. He had built his empire from the gutters up. He was the ice prince of the tech sector, the man who calculated risk better than any algorithm. And he had been undone not by corporate espionage or a market crash, but by the soft lips and gentle lies of Elias Thorn. Elias was Cassian's younger half-brother, the black sheep, who had supposedly been cast out of the Thorn dynasty years ago. Julian had found him charming, broken, and sweet. He had taken him in, loved him, and trusted him with the one thing Julian never gave away, his vulnerability. Julian's phone buzzed. A text from Elias. Asterisk, don't wait up. Family dinner. Asterisk, Julian hurled the glass against the partition. It shattered, amber liquid dripping down the leather like poisoned blood. By the time he reached his penthouse office, the storm outside lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows, mirroring the tempest within. He didn't turn on the lights. The glow of the city, a sprawling grid of electric veins, was enough. I expected you to be crying. A voice came from the shadows. Julian froze, his hand hovering over his desk lamp. He knew that voice. It was deep, textured like gravel wrapped in velvet, and arrogant enough to fill a cathedral. Get out, Cassian, Julian said, his voice steady, betraying nothing. Cassian Thorn stepped out from the corner where the shadows were deepest. He was a towering figure, broad-shouldered and impeccably dressed in a charcoal three-piece suit that cost more than most people's homes. His eyes, the color of molten gold, glinted in the semi-darkness. You have terrible security, Julian. Or perhaps. Cassian walked closer, invading Julian's personal space with the ease of an apex predator. Perhaps you just have a habit of letting the wrong people in. If you're here to gloat about the Neo Harbor project, Julian hissed, turning to face him, do it and leave. Before I have security throw you off the balcony. Cassian chuckled, a low, rumbling sound. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick folder. He tossed it onto Julian's desk. I don't want it. Julian stared at the folder, then back at Cassian. Excuse me. The project. The bid. I don't want it, Cassian repeated, leaning his hip against the desk, crossing his arms. I like winning, Julian. I live for the kill. But I like my kills clean. I don't like feeding on carrion left by a scavenger. Julian's eyes narrowed. Elias. Elias. Cassian confirmed, the name tasting like ash in his mouth. My dear, conniving little brother. He didn't just leak your bid to me, Julian. He orchestrated the entire auction floor to ensure I had no choice but to bid that specific amount or look weak before the shareholders. He played us both. Why? Julian asked, the pain finally cracking through his icy facade. I gave him everything. Because he is a thorn by blood, if not by nature, Cassian said, his voice dropping an octave. And he wants the throne. He thinks if he destroys you, he proves his loyalty to our father. And if he forces me to bankrupt my liquidity on this project, he leaves me vulnerable to a hostile takeover, which he is launching tomorrow morning. Julian felt the room spin. It was a double cross. Elias hadn't just sold Julian out to help Cashin. He had used Julian as a sacrificial pawn to checkmate Cashin. It was brilliant. It was sociopathic. So, Julian whispered, the realization dawning on him. The enemy of my enemy is my future husband. Cashin finished calmly. Julian choked. What? Cashin stepped forward, trapping Julian against the cold glass of the window. The city lights haloed Cashin's dark hair. The air between them crackled with a tension that was part hatred, part electric attraction. Elias has the board in his pocket. He has the public sympathy, the prodigal son returning with the head of the rival CEO. The only way to stop him, the only way to merge our assets and block his takeover without triggering an antitrust suit, is a union. Cashin's hand came up, his thumb grazing Julian's jawline. Marriage. Tonight. We merge Vane Industries and Thorn Corp by dawn. We crush him together. You hate me, Julian breathed, his heart hammering against his ribs. I respect you, Cashin corrected, his gaze dropping to Julian's lips. I hate that you're better at algorithms than I am. I hate that you look so composed even when your world is burning. But I don't hate you. Julian looked into the eyes of the man who had been his rival for a decade. He saw ruthlessness, yes. But he also saw a strange, fiery honesty that Elias had never possessed. Elias was a mirror that showed you what you wanted to see. Cashin was a wall of fire, dangerous, but undeniably real. If we do this, Julian said, regaining his composure, pulling back just an inch to assert his own space. I want 51% of the joint venture. Cashin threw his head back and laughed. You just lost $400 million and you're negotiating equity? Fine. 50-50. And you move in with me. My security is better. Julian hesitated. This was madness. It was a deal with the devil. But as the image of Elias's bored face flashed in his mind, the man who had kissed him goodbye that morning knowing he was about to destroy him, Julian felt something inside him snap and reforge into something harder. Deal, Julian said. The wedding was a sterile, legal affair conducted by a terrifyingly efficient judge in Cashin's penthouse library at 3 a.m. By 8 a.m., the press release hit the wires. The stock market had a seizure. When Elias walked into the Thorn Corp boardroom, expecting to be crowned king, he found Julian sitting at the right hand of the chairman's seat and Cashin at the head. The look on Elias's face, the shattering of that perfect porcelain mask, was worth every cent of the $400 million. But the war was far from over. The first month of their marriage was a battlefield. They lived in Cashin's sprawling estate, a brutalist masterpiece of concrete and glass perched on a cliffside. They argued over everything. The coffee blend, the restructuring of the HR departments, the temperature of the bedroom. Yes, the bedroom. Because to sell the lie, to convince the SEC and the public that this wasn't just a merger, they had to live like a couple. You're hogging the sheets, Julian muttered one rainy Tuesday night, tugging at the high thread count Egyptian cotton. You're emitting cold air like a broken AC unit. Cashin retorted, not opening his eyes. He was shirtless, his muscular back turned to Julian. I wouldn't be cold if your house wasn't a mausoleum. It's minimalist. It's pretentious. Cashin turned over, propping himself up on one elbow. The moonlight caught the sharp planes of his face. You miss him. The statement hung in the air, sucking out the oxygen. Julian stiffened. I don't. You do, Cashin said, his voice devoid of mockery for once. You miss the idea of him. You miss having someone warm to come home to. You're grieving, Julian. It's annoying, but it's human. I am not grieving, Julian snapped, sitting up. The sheet fell to his waist, exposing his pale, slender chest. I am plotting. There is a difference. Is there? Cashin reached out. For a moment, Julian thought he would strike him or push him away. Instead, Cashin's large, warm hand covered Julian's cold one resting on the mattress. He hurt you. Deeply. You allowed yourself to be vulnerable, and he weaponized it. That leaves a scar. Julian looked at their joined hands. Cashin's hand was calloused, rough, engulfing his own. Why do you care? We have the company. Elias is marginalized. You have what you wanted. Do I? Cashin's thumb rubbed the back of Julian's hand. Maybe I realized that the chase was only fun because you were the one running. Now that I've caught you, I find I don't want to let go. Julian's breath hitched. This is a business arrangement. Contracts can be renegotiated, Cashin murmured. He leaned in, slowly, giving Julian every chance to pull away. Julian didn't. When their lips met, it wasn't soft. It was a collision. It was the clash of two empires, two forces of nature that had spent years orbiting each other in hostility, now colliding in a supernova of heat. Cashin kissed with the same intensity he brought to the boardroom, demanding, thorough, and overwhelming. Julian, starved of genuine passion after 2 years of Elias's performative affection, melted into it. He tangled his fingers in Cashin's hair, pulling him closer, anchoring himself in the storm. For the first time in months, the ice in his chest began to thaw, replaced by a terrifying, searing heat. The truce shifted. The arguments over coffee stopped. The arguments over business strategy continued, but they lacked the venom of before. They became a dance. Julian provided the calculated logic. Cashin provided the ruthless instinct. Together, they were unstoppable. Thornvein Corp's stock soared. But Elias was not done. 6 weeks into their marriage, Julian was leaving the office late. The underground parking garage was empty, the fluorescent lights buzzing ominously. He reached his car, fumbling for his keys, when a damp cloth clamped over his mouth. Chloroform. The sweet, sickly scent filled his nose. He struggled, elbowing his attacker in the ribs, but another set of hands grabbed his arms. Quiet, darling. A familiar voice whispered in his ear. We just need to talk. Elias. Julian's vision blurred. The last thing he saw was the concrete floor rushing up to meet him. He woke up zip-tied to a chair in what looked like an abandoned warehouse. Classic. Elias always did have a flair for the dramatic. Elias was pacing in front of him, looking disheveled. The polished veneer was gone, replaced by a manic energy. You ruined everything, Elias muttered, chewing on his thumbnail. I was supposed to be the CEO. I was supposed to be the one on the magazine covers. You're delusional, Julian croaked, his head pounding. Elias stopped and grabbed Julian's face, squeezing his cheeks. And you were supposed to be broken, ruined. Instead, you marry him? My brother? The man who has treated me like dirt my whole life. He treated you like a liability, Julian spat. And he was right. Elias struck him. A sharp backhand that split Julian's lip. Shut up. You don't know anything about this family. You think Cashin cares about you? He's using you. Just like I did. Once he secures the board votes next month, he'll annul the marriage and leave you with nothing. You're projecting, Elias, Julian said, tasting blood. Cashin has something you don't. Oh, and what's that? Honor. Elias laughed, pulling a gun from his waistband. Honor doesn't stop a bullet, Julian. I'm going to send him a live stream. A ransom demand. He resigns, or his pretty new husband gets a closed casket funeral. He set up a tripod with a phone. Say cheese, honey. The metal door of the warehouse exploded inward. It wasn't a tactical team. It was a luxury SUV ramming through the corrugated metal like it was paper. The vehicle screeched to a halt, debris raining down. Elias stumbled back, raising the gun. Cashin emerged from the driver's seat. He wasn't holding a weapon. He was holding a tire iron, and he looked like a demon unleashed from hell. His suit jacket was gone, his sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle and rage. Cashin! Elias shrieked, his hand shaking. Stay back. I'll kill him. Cashin didn't stop walking. He didn't even look at the gun. His eyes were locked on the blood trickling down Julian's chin. If you pull that trigger, Cashin said, his voice eerily calm, resonating through the vast space. I will ensure that you don't die. I will keep you alive, Elias. And I will make you pray for the mercy of hell. Elias hesitated. The fear of his older brother, ingrained since childhood, wavered his aim. You won't hurt me. Mom wouldn't let you. Mom isn't here, Cashin snarled. And you touched what is mine. Mine, the word echoed in Julian's head. Elias fired. Julian screamed, but the shot went wide as Cashin lunged. He didn't dodge. He simply closed the distance with terrifying speed. The tire iron swung, knocking the gun from Elias's hand with a sickening crunch of bone. Elias fell, cradling his shattered wrist, wailing. Cashin didn't hit him again. He kicked the gun away and dropped the tire iron. He fell to his knees in front of Julian, his hands shaking as he pulled a knife from his boot to slice the zip ties. Julian. Cashin breathed, his voice ragged. Julian, look at me. Are you okay? The bonds fell away. Julian practically collapsed into Cashin's arms. He buried his face in Cashin's neck, smelling rain, leather, and safety. I knew you'd come, Julian whispered. I tore the city apart, Cashin confessed, pressing a kiss to Julian's bloody temple. He looked over his shoulder at Elias, who was curling into a ball, sobbing. Cashin pulled out his phone. Police. And an ambulance. For the perpetrator. He fell. The scandal of Elias Thorne's arrest for kidnapping and attempted murder dominated the news cycle for weeks. The board of directors, horrified, unanimously voted to strip him of all shares and standing. Thornvane Corp was secure. But amidst the legal chaos, the real story was happening in the quiet moments. Julian sat on the terrace of the estate, watching the sunset over the ocean. His lip was healed, though a faint scar remained. The glass door slid open. Cashin walked out, carrying 2 glasses of wine. He sat beside Julian, not saying a word, just offering the glass. The lawyers finalized the post-nuptial agreement, Julian said quietly. If we annul now, we both walk away with our original assets plus a 50% split of the profits made during the union. Is that what you want? Cashin asked, looking at the horizon. To walk away? Julian took a sip of the wine. It was rich, complex, and lingered on the tongue. Logic dictates it. The threat is neutralized. The business is stable. We are redundant. Logic is boring, Cashin said. He turned to face Julian, placing his hand on Julian's knee. And I think we've established that I am a man of impulse. And what is your impulse telling you now? Cashin took the glass from Julian's hand and set it on the table. He leaned in, his eyes searching Julian's. That I don't want an empty house anymore. That I like the way you argue with me. That I love the way you look at me when you think I'm not noticing. Julian's breath caught. Cashin. Stay, Cashin said. It wasn't a command. It was a plea. Stay with me. Not for the company. Not for revenge. For us. Julian looked at the man who had been his enemy, his rival, his savior, and now, his husband. He thought of Elias, the sweet lies, the hidden daggers. Then he looked at Cashin, the harsh truths, the protective shield. Julian smiled, a genuine, soft expression that transformed his face. I suppose, Julian said, leaning forward to brush his lips against Cashin's, it would be a poor financial decision to dissolve such a successful partnership. Cashin grinned, the predator finally at rest. Agreed. And as Cashin kissed him, pulling him into his lap under the vast, star-strewn sky, Julian knew that losing the bid had been the greatest victory of his life. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf. If you enjoyed seeing Elias get exactly what he deserved, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a husband who tried to kill you? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then.